Hello, I'm James, and I'm an old guy in Europe. Hello, and welcome to another episode of An Old Guy in Europe. A few weeks back in episode 26, I briefly mentioned the infatuation of being new to Portugal and how it was like being infatuated in a romantic relationship. And I wanted to expand on this idea. So, this week on Good Morning Portugal back in December of 2023, I talked with Carl Munson as his featured guest about 8 stages of romantic relationship that I came up with, from infatuation to evolution, and how they might also apply to making a move to a new country, like Portugal, for instance. So, like always, I invite you to please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Swing. Who doesn't like a swing first thing?
Bom dia, Luisa.
Hi, James. How are you? You looking well?
Fantástico. Obrigado.
It's beaming from ear to ear. It's a great start. This is Happy Monday, Portugal. This is how we roll here. Very cheerful on a Monday morning. And this is how we like to roll every single Monday morning. And who better to do that with in the company of Slug's friend James this morning with Yogi Berra quotes and insights, thoughts from the Redwoods, we used to call this. He's newly, for people who don't know you, James, you're a year, just over a year into your life in Portugal, right? And you have you've got a lot to reflect on and share about that process, which we do every Monday morning, right?
Yes. Well, I think about a lot all the time, and my list of things that I want to talk about is just getting longer and longer and longer. So I don't think I'll ever run out of material.
Well, I saw this picture at the weekend.
Yes.
Thought of you.
Where's that?
Nice willy too.
That's me.
I didn't notice this.
This is just such a big head.
Carl sent that to me and said, saw this, thought of you.
Well, I put the emphasis on thought of you, you see. This is how thinking is, isn't it? That's quite the thing, isn't it? I think that is when one is overburdened by thinking. And it is worth pointing out, isn't it, that thinking can get to excessive and dangerous levels sometimes. Do you find that, James, or is the clue in mindfulness here?
Yeah, I think you're right on spot on there. I never feel overburdened with thinking. I just sometimes get confused or confuse others when I share my thinking with them. I say you wouldn't want to wander around inside my head. It's just really busy.
Look at this, and you're being referred to as Slug Bayard, which does make you sound like an international man of mystery who wears a cravat and maybe smokes a pipe. I am Slug Bayard. I'm so delighted to meet you.
I need a pipe. Yeah.
I think so. Can't wait to meet one day soon. So we'll have to get you back to the meetup, James, and we'll come and see you down there. What's been on your mind today? Not just today. What's been on your mind for today? What have you been thinking about over the last week? Let's come back to you, James, with what you've been thinking about mindful migration. And we like this. It's not a twist exactly. It's a positioning context of the mindful migration, doing it in a certain way, that minimizes stress and has you have a happy and long and successful life here in Portugal. Is that the idea of mindful migration?
Actually, can I just say goodbye? Because I've got lessons and all sorts to be dealing with at the moment.
Mindful migration, my friend. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely. I was thinking today, well, for a while, actually, since my first interview with you nearly a year ago at this point, I think I just threw out this concept of the infatuation stage of being here. And that actually got me to thinking about the process of the decision-making, the integration, all the process of choosing Portugal and to be in Portugal. And it really struck me how similar it was to Well, pretty much any relationship, but I was thinking more specifically romantic relationship. And as I looked at what does that mean? You know, a romantic relationship, how does that develop? What is the infatuation stage? Each time I looked at it, there was a direct relationship to making a move to pretty much anywhere, but in my case, to Portugal, and for us, more specific to that. So I said, well, maybe I should put together some kind of a list like they do on Facebook a lot, like, 5 things that'll make you happy or whatever. So I came up with what ended up being 8 stages of relationship. And then
Cool.
parenthetically, I put and applicable to Portugal. So, and most of this, like I just kind of toyed with the thought, and pretty much last night I said, okay, so what are these things? And I just sort of whipped it together. So it may, I guess I'm introducing it as it's not completely thought out, completely worked out, well developed, but these are the ideas that came to me as I was thinking about it.
Well, thank you.
Uh,
And we can return to this, can't we? We can develop it over the weeks ahead. So fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had no idea when I put this together whether this was an 8 weeks workshop or, a 5-minute thing. So we'll see. But I started with the infatuation because that seems to be where most relationships, especially romantic relationships, start. And I define that as a situation where our love or the focus of our affection, that love over there, can do no wrong. There are no flaws. There's wonder. There's joy. You never want it to change, and that there's a feeling that the feeling will last forever. To me, that sort of encapsulates infatuation. So you transfer that from directed at another human being, and arriving in Portugal or the decision to be here, and it all seems pretty straight across the board.
Yeah.
We love it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no flaws. There's wonder. There's joy in being here. You never want it to change, and it feels like it's going to last forever. Most of the people I've talked with who have recently arrived feel pretty much that way. I've
Yeah.
never met anyone who came to visit who wanted to go home.
That's so
Ever.
true. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
They say, "Oh, I'll come. I'll get boots on the ground." It's like, "Oh, my ticket is for next week. I wish I had my visa now." That kind of thing. So,
And that's when Hank and Connie came. They came to destruction test their ideas about Portugal, and they couldn't do it, could they? It just
right.
kept getting better and better, and their infatuation stage absolutely amplified and enhanced, didn't it, throughout their stay
Yes.
and their tour?
Yes, and that's not to say sometimes. I mean, especially when people decide to get married, which is later down the process,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that those feelings aren't genuine and that they won't last. It's just these are the feelings you're going to have when you first fall in love. You become infatuated. So,
Yeah.
yes, it's difficult to find things that might be problems or challenges, I should say.
And you're not really looking either, are you, at this stage? You're looking
No.
for the evidence to confirm your choice, aren't you, as well, at this point?
Generally, yes. And that's one of the things I like about scientific process. I think it's the only thing that specifically says in scientific methodology, we have a hypothesis we're going to try to disprove.
Yeah.
And if we can't disprove it, it must be true.
Yes.
I love that approach.
Yes. But that's not how many people approach coming to Portugal, is it?
No, I think most people want, that we want to fall in love.
Yes.
And so we do look for evidence. And for me, I didn't even have to meet her yet. I just read about her and said, yeah, that's my girl.
Yes.
I'm packing my bags, getting rid of my stuff, and I'm moving in. So,
And you had posters up on the wall and everything, didn't you?
That's right.
A tattoo.
So if that's a phase you're in, it's probably you're fairly new to being here, and chances are you'll feel those feelings throughout the long term if it works for you. But just be aware that, and this is, I think, the benefit that Mrs. M brings, is that she can say, well, you might not have noticed this about her. You notice? It's like, oh, okay. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. And then down the road, you go, okay. I see it
Yes.
now. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Uh, then after infatuation, I said, what happens after, and it's not like, okay, this ends and this starts. There's always sort of a gradual transition, but we transition into what I'm calling assimilation, which is getting to know and understand each other, learning to dance, getting that sense of, oh, we do it this way, that way, getting a more realistic understanding of the relationship. So
Yes.
we might still, oh, I love that, I love that, and I wish I could do that better, and how do I make it work a little better for us, and so on. So I think assimilation, that made sense to me, and I'm realizing that we don't all do everything in order. Just like people talk about the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
It's like we may do 7 stages. We may not have stages. We may be in all of them at once. We may not have some and have others. It's just sort of a guide, basically. I think a stereotype more than necessarily a specific reality for each and every person. But assimilation feels like, yeah, that's sort of the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
We still love each other, and now let's see if we can really get a feel for each other. Sense of humor, whatever.
Yes. Yes. I think I know what's coming. Go on.
Okay, so then we'll move quickly into the 8th stage, which is consideration. It's like, okay, I've seen the flawless you. I've looked at how we can kind of work together. Now I'm into consideration.
Yes. This is 3rd stage. I think we're at stage 3 now, right? 3rd base, as it were.
Stage 3, yes,
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it's pretty obvious. Considering, do I want to do this? What does this mean to me? Am I really committed to this? I'm considering. So I'm looking at the future. I'm starting to ask myself, what do I want? And is this it? And whether it's yes or no, how do I manage that? Right? If it's no, how do I manage changing it or not being in it? And if it's yes, like, okay, well, how do I manage that? I'm thinking now, I'm moving toward something that may be a little deeper, something that may be a little more permanent. I need to kind of mull it around.
Yeah. And there's that growing sense of this is it now, right? You really have. I mean, we're getting some lovely feedback here, which is great. During the infatuation stage, everything, even flaws, seem cute. So you can, even
Yes.
when something goes a bit wrong at that stage, you go, oh, it's just having to wait 6 hours for my NIF number. That's just so sweet. It's just life. It's just life here. It's just gonna go with the flow. And then you saw her on the internet and jumped in. Yes, that's not a bad analogy.
Yeah, virtual relationship. Go for it.
We'll come back to this one, Darren, because boredom. Yes, I mean, I think that's a bit early in the process at the moment, but it's going to come up, I suspect. And on infatuation, Gary says infatuation is absolutely exciting, but true love is meaningful and grows over time. So it is with Portugal. There will be bumps in the road, but getting past them strengthens the bond. You've jumped ahead a little bit there, Garvo, but I don't think we would disagree with that. Are we into stage 4 now?
Yes, we're moving into stage 4. I just wanted to say on Gary's comment that he's really totally in alignment with this notion. You can see how it goes across the board. You can imagine falling in love with another human and then apply that to falling in love with your new location. And it seems to fit really well. At least it did in my mind. So that's what got me thinking about these things. So then in stage 4, I call it modification and negotiation. So now we said, yes, we're going to be here. And yes, we've seen that it's not quite the perfect feeling that it was at the beginning. Yes, we love each other. Yes, we want to be together. We've considered it. We want to move forward. But now there's a little bit of modification and negotiation necessary if we're going to be talking long term.
Mm.
and committed. So in this phase, we're looking at our ideas and expectations, managing our wants and needs, finding win-win solutions to challenges, and making the necessary changes. So now we're looking at how do we do this dance more like professionals? We didn't just jump out on the dance floor like we did the first day. Now we're trying to actually learn how to do a dance together. And I use dance in relationship a lot because I just think it's a great metaphor. The notion of the music that you like and how you move to the music, and it's nobody's fault if someone's toes get stepped on, because someone has to step on the toes and someone has to have their toes in the place where they get stepped on. So it's just a matter of how do we coordinate without blame and just learn how to do this more gracefully and eloquently. And so dance in relationship, I think, works really well. And in this case, we're actually learning how to dance now. If I'm going to put my foot here, your foot needs to be there in order for us to not trip over each other. So that's the modification and the negotiation. Well, I like to put my foot here, and so you should put your foot there. And that's where we can start getting into some of the challenges. As it applies to the country, it's like, okay, so the pace is slower. The bureaucracy is something lots of people complain about, although for me, bureaucracy is bureaucracy. It doesn't matter where you are. It's always a pain in the ass. So
Yes.
And for me, like in some ways, especially when it's in person, when you're getting your papers stamped and things like that, I've never had a grumpy Portuguese person doing that. So I haven't had the experience of it being a negative experience. To me, it's more a smiling practice of patience. It's like, okay, they're looking at that document, and they're stamping that, putting over here, and then they're having a conversation with a coworker. It's just slower pace, but it's not unpleasant so far in my experience. So, and I have read other people that have different experiences. So it still applies, though, in the modification negotiation. Is that going to work for me? No, you need to do that different, or I need it this way. How can we make it work? So it still applies. And I mentioned expectations, and that's something I want to talk about in the future, is managing expectations. It's a huge part of living a peaceful life, in my experience, being able to manage that. But that's a part of this modification negotiation stage as well.
Yeah. Well, we have such an erudite bunch here, because this has been connected to conscious incompetence. This is the stages of mastery, isn't it? Stage 4 is like conscious incompetence, and PT Country Bear goes on to say it's where a lot of people give up because they see how much work this change will entail. So the infatuation lens or feeling is beginning to fade a little bit, or is not as quite as intense, and some of the realities of the relationship are showing themselves. And that can be quite tough. That can be quite triggering, kind of. And I think you're absolutely right, PT Country Bear, about that. What would you say? Would you acknowledge that connection here of conscious incompetence at this stage?
Well, I'm not familiar with the conscious incompetence concept, but if it's like this, then I can totally relate to it for sure. And it seems to line up with it. I do want to also point out, again, in the mindfulness thing, attachment is another huge issue, which is a part of expectation. And in this point where we're looking at how do we make this work, and we're almost there saying, yes, this is what we want to do. There's attachment to the infatuation. We want it to be like it was. And if it's not like that, what's wrong? Why isn't it still that way? There must be a problem. It's like, no, this is just mature development into a deeper relationship. So we also need to manage in that expectation. We have to manage that attachment to it being the way it was when we were madly in love and there wasn't a problem to be seen.
Yes, well said. Yes,
it's not reality.
Yeah. And that is a really great way of reframing that, isn't it? Because it just can seem like a massive disappointment. I suppose we will have those moments in the first flushes of a relationship, like, I can't believe they just said that, or where the scales are falling from the eyes. It's that moment, isn't it? And then the reaction to that moment of like, have I made a horrible decision, or This is all juicy stuff, isn't it, that we're familiar with from other parts of our lives, I suspect.
Absolutely. And one of the big ones that I'm always amazed can get this far into a relationship is, do we want children? Like sometimes that shows up in this modification negotiation phase. Like, what? We're like very nearly saying we want to get married, and we're only now discovering that we have very different views on whatever it is. That's one of the dangers of infatuation and attachment to it, is we tend not to want to talk about those things. So we don't get to it till,
I see. So it could be that you well, of course, you're avoiding addressing some things because of the danger it might bring. That's the dark side of infatuation, I guess, as well as one of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a variation of only seeing the positive.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And all of this stands up in as a reflection and as a metaphor for Portugal. So here we are at stage 4. What did you call that? Modification
and negotiation. Yeah.
Negotiation. So where next after that?
Well, then we move into declaration. We said, okay, I kind of worked it all. We've worked it out. We figured that out. Yes, I can live with those rules. Yes. Okay. So, I have to report to 17 different agencies every time I change my address. I can manage that, whatever it is. If we're applying it to moving, it's the same idea. I've modified, I've negotiated, we've worked it out, and we have decided we can make it work. This is going to work for us. We managed to let go of that infatuation. We still have those moments of deep passion and, just amazing, looking at awe at our partner. I mean, that's still there. It's just not the only thing that's there. It's become a more realistic relationship. And at that point, it feels like declaration of some form or another. I think traditionally, at least in Western culture, there's the getting engaged and letting everyone know we're going to get married. There's that sense of, yes, we're declaring this relationship as something that we intend to be a long-term thing.
And in the analogy, though, James, hasn't the declaration sometimes been made before coming, like we're moving to Portugal? Or are you redeclaring at this point in the processes you're describing?
Well, I think you're right. I think some people make that declaration while they're infatuated. And you look at relationships that do that, where 2 days into the relationship, they're getting married. Sometimes that works. I mean, passion can work. The universe can put us together in ways that are truly miraculous, where we meet each other, we know it's right, we get married in a week, and we've lived 50 years in relationship. That happens sometimes, but I think if you look statistically, it's highly, highly unlikely. I think the statistics will put you at a much higher failure rate doing that than giving it some time. So yes, absolutely, in the move. And some of that, when I came, there was certainly a part of infatuation, but I also, and this may be a part of looking at how to look at relationships too. I came with an open mind. I said, I'm 90% sure that I'm going to love this place. So why not just do what I need to do to be there? And worst case scenario, I'm there 5 years. I have my residency, and it's, that's permanent. And then I can do whatever I want, if it doesn't turn out to be what I want it to be. So I don't know if we want to go into a relationship with another person with that, but open-minded for sure. I'm going to be in this and love the joy that I experience here, but I'm also going to reserve a spot in my more mature thinking process for looking at what the possibilities are, giving room for things to be different than I might have had in mind. And that if it doesn't turn out to be exactly what I want, then and this would happen earlier in the stages of relationship, I would decide, nah, I don't think I am ready to move into the negotiation and modification. I think I need to, in my consideration, consider not being here now.
That's incredible, and something that I'm realizing about my own journey here. Hold on, I'm just trying to get this fly again now.
Yep, that was fun. You could do that all show.
I'm so sorry. This is so distracting, but you can imagine, can't you, what it's like here?
Yeah,
So forgive me, everybody, for that, but I
no
think
problem.
that I sorted him out there. I came with the intention of coming and being here, and I didn't even consider that it was an experiment, and that is setting things up, isn't it? The stakes are higher, and it's much more mature. I think that was the word you used. It is much more mature to have some sort of element of like, this is going to be an experiment. This is what I would like to do, and I'm going to try. Not a sort of shit or bust kind of approach. And I know a lot of people do that, and I know that kind of helps in a way. But the problem with that, as my massage therapist once told me about sleeping with your clients, is that it's a bit like an aeroplane flying in a jumbo or whatever. It's usually okay, and it takes off and it lands and everything's usually okay. But when it comes down real bad. And that's the
Mhm.
same thing with migration, isn't it? Is that if you do have that, pardon my French, that shit or bust approach. I'm just doing this gung ho. I'm all in here. We're going to make this work. You set yourself up for some possibly awkward and difficult dynamics, don't you? And I know it does work for people. I would say it's worked for us in many ways, but if it does go wrong, you have created another level of stakes or dynamics that can hurt you.
Absolutely. And again, I tend to, I have some foundational characteristics of being human. I've talked about ego, I've talked about attachment, and with attachment comes suffering. And what happens with that kind of a jump in and a determinedness, I'm going to make this work without an open mind to what might my options be if it doesn't, what's the possibility that it won't. Then you become really attached to being right. Your ego is
Yes.
like, oh, no, it's right for me. This can't possibly be what's happening. It's like, well, it's happening. Yes, it is.
It's
No, it's
happening,
not.
buddy.
And a refusal to let go and all the suffering that comes from that, as opposed to
Keeping you.
coming with this idea that this is a relationship I'd like to explore. Sometimes I question, or I think, well, my approach to relationship doesn't feel like that standard romance novel romantic, because really what I'm doing is exploring the possibility of this becoming something really great. But that doesn't go over like a really, to me, it's like, oh, I love you so much right from the start. It's like, well, I want to find out if I do, and I want to explore that possibility. So to me,
Yes.
it's all exploring possibility before jumping in. And then I'm all in and I go through the infatuation, but I approach, I don't want to say with caution, but to me, it just feels a little more like reality. Like this is an adult approach to the potential of a new relationship.
And declaration is possibly a more healthy and mature moment to say I'm all in, rather than deciding that the day you see
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
the day you saw your first pastel de nata. That's it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. We're at stage 5 of 8, right? It's not at stage 1.
Okay, fair enough. Number 6 then.
Okay. So number 6, I refer to as preparation. Okay. So we've made this declaration. Now, what do we need to do to put our house in order, to get this, to create this life that we've declared we're going to share together? And in preparation, and this to me is really kind of the sealing moment, because even at declaration, people change their mind. Even when people get engaged, sometimes they go, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. So there's still that.
Back up the truck.
That's right. What was I thinking? Maybe that's where we have the conversation about who wants kids, and not both of us do. Maybe that's what happens during the engagement.
Who wants to move to Portugal? Yeah, who wants to move to Portugal? Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So when we're in the preparation, we've declared, and now we're saying this is our intention. And with our intention comes commitment. And that is a huge word. I have, as a therapist, I work with many, many couples, and commitment to me is the number one reason that relationships work or don't work: lack of commitment. Because things can get really, really tough. And if you bail on it when it's tough, because you're not committed enough to work your way through it, then the relationship may end when it doesn't need to. Sometimes it still needs to, right? But in this place, if we're not committed to doing the work and to being here and to getting through the disappointments and to working on our attachments to things needing to be a way that they aren't, this is where things can fail. And I think because this is the sixth stage of 8, we're nearly to the end of the game here. I think this is why some people become so sad and so disappointed and maybe even angry, very strong emotions about it didn't work, because they're getting to this place where we're supposed to be preparing for the future, and God damn it, I miss my family back in the States, and I just can't, no matter how attached I was to everything else, I cannot make that work for me. And so because I haven't approached this relationship from from being mindful about where they're at and what they want, if you get to stage 6 and it's time to leave, you stayed too long. You know, to me, it's like that's something that probably could have been figured out by stage 3 or somewhere earlier in this stage. So I think that why there can be so much disappointment and sadness is that people wait all the way to the place where they're supposed to be getting prepared, and they figure out, I've already declared it, but it's not working. I can't really fully commit to this. And actually, it's better to do that there than to not do it and suffer through it. But it can be more difficult to change at that point. So we're going to assume we've decided, yes, we're going to get married. I'm going to become a resident of Portugal. I love it being here. So now how do I prepare for that? What is my intention? What do I want to do if I'm going to be here for the rest of my life? Something that maybe we haven't considered before. I've declared I want to be here. What do I want to do while I'm here? I think the notion of retirement is an old notion. And it's a notion of, sitting on your porch with a cup of tea or coffee or beer and just looking at the view and going, this is wonderful. And I'm going to do this every day, all day for the remainder of my life. It's like, no, I don't think that's, to me, it's not a very fulfilling way to live the remainder of my life. But
even if you have chewing tobacco and a gun on your lap?
Yes, even if now, and I don't want to put some people, that's what they have lived for. That's all they want. And if that really is a fulfilling experience, then absolutely. I'm not trying to put that down. I'm just saying that's not my idea of how I want to spend the rest of my life. So this idea of retirement, the point ultimately is it's very specific to the individual. And I think some people approach this and marriage, as or long-term relationships. Some people approach it with, oh man, what are some of the terms? Ball and chain for our spouse. Like what? Like that? Why are you even in the declaration if that's how you're viewing it, And the idea is, and I know it's in fun, but at the bachelor party, like, oh yeah, your one last fling before you become a slave to your wife kind of attitude is like, no.
Young men, listen to James here. It's not going to help. Can I just stop you there for a moment? Because just to be clear on these, stage 6 should be stage 1. I think we've covered this really, haven't we? The declaration should not necessarily be confused with infatuation. I think that's what Paul's saying here, right? Is that how you would read this?
Well, and we're in preparation too. And I think in many regards, Paul's right. If we're going to continue using the term mature, and I know that can be a triggering word because it can state, better than or worse than. I'm just saying, whatever we want to call that, a more reasoned approach, perhaps better than mature, would be to consider, what am I going to do for the rest of my life if I go there? But consider that.
It's a second level of preparation, then, isn't it? We've established a number of things here, which means there is another level of preparation. It's not the preparation of coming here, is it? It's the preparation of, okay, we are in a deeper level now. We're kind of going full circle in a funny sort of way, aren't we? To a new level of preparation. Sorry, I was getting declaration and preparation mixed up there. But preparation, of course, it's not as if nothing's been prepared before this point, but we're talking about a new angle, a new power of preparation.
Well, yeah, and maybe I don't know that we can avoid stage one, being infatuated. We're going to see things we love and we're going to fall in love with it. But somewhere early in the process would be a good point to say, if this continues down this road and we end up at stage 6, what do I want to do? What am I going to do with my life there? Right?
Yeah.
I can be infatuated, okay, and then move on to the next one and move on to the next one. That's okay. I don't have to worry about this. What am I going to do for the rest of my life, except maybe stay infatuated for the rest of my life?
Yes. And some people do.
But yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. That's really helpful. Thank you, Darren, as well. Of course, we can change our minds at any stage. Don't rule it out. We can. And there might be some access to something else there in this whole metaphor of migration and what it can bring to us. We might be the sort of person who changes our mind without doing the stage you talked about, James, which is the commitment. So it might be commitment phobes could think, okay, it's not going very well. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to look at Panama instead, or So it's the key here. That I suppose the key word is mindfulness, isn't it? Is like, okay, yes, of course you can change your mind at any time, but why are you really doing that? Is it because you've thoughtfully exhausted every possibility of examining your infatuation and the subsequent stages, or is it like, oh, okay, no, I don't like this, I'm out of here? Could it be that? Which I'm not saying you're doing that, Darren, but that can happen, right?
Well, yes, and it depends on what you want. It depends on how you want to live your life. I mean, yeah, all of us can change our minds at any point, and there's nothing wrong with that. I change my mind frequently, but it's usually not about whether I'm getting married or not. So it kind of depends on the level of commitment that you're willing to make, and it's absolutely appropriate. I would much prefer that we get to stage 6 where we're looking at what's my commitment and go, oh, I can't muster that kind of commitment. No, and change my mind. But for me, to live the most fulfilling life I can, I want to be as mindful as I can about every decision I make, because I realize that that's my life. My life is choices. Yeah. So if I'm making choices that work for me, my life is going to work for me. And that's what I need to look at, rather than, oh, this is kind of tough. I'm uncomfortable because it's challenging. I'm getting out of here. That's just an unwillingness to face the challenges. And I think there's a much deeper level of life to be experienced when we do that, when we do stick with the challenge and say,
oh my God, yeah. Yes, that's
and maybe we still don't resolve it, but at least we've discovered something about ourselves in the process of attempting to resolve something that's challenging.
Yes, indeed. And we're looking at this changing of minds from both sides, aren't we? What can be gained from examining it more deeply? And of course, nothing wrong with changing your mind necessarily. Those who cannot change their minds, in fact, cannot change anything, including their underpants. Well done, George Bernard Shaw via T-Duck. I don't know if Darren is showing us a house as a level of commitment. That's true. That wasn't necessarily aimed at you, Darren.
That's a church.
Is it a church? Possibly there. The marriage. Oh yeah,
yes, a little cross on top of it.
That's right. I'm not changing my mind every week about who I'm getting married to. Yes. Oh, and John, look at you, John. Can we please have a definition of an analogy and a metaphor and the difference?
Please help me. I never know the difference.
And a simile. I think simile is where you use like or as. An analogy. Actually, I'm not going to even try that. Maybe you could do that. Oh, it's a wedding church. Darren amused. Yeah, amused by your comment there, I think, about changing your mind about marriage. It does happen. A well-known Paul said on this program, failing to plan is planning to fail. Best words ever. Yeah, that's Paul Correa, isn't it? I think I get the feeling Paul likes this Paul Richards likes a bit of planning and preparation, and was quite keen to hear what you had to say about that. The analogy goes out the window for me here. My stage 6 commitment and comfort in Portugal, weekends in France. And also John of John and Pam is talking about dancing with 2 partners and having a spouse and a mistress.
In the negotiation process, you negotiated having a mistress. I don't know.
There you go. My long-term infatuation with France fizzled. I viewed it through rose-colored glasses. My burgeoning romance with Portugal comes more from a mature and pragmatic place. There you go. Some mindful reflection on how that's come to be there. Thank you, Suze, for that input. I'm aware that we have 7 and 8 to look at, James.
Yes. I really didn't know how long it would take, so I'm thrilled
Well,
that
do you know
we're.
what? I'm gonna make a segment of this because I think it's fascinating, and I think you're right. This could lend itself to a webinar. It could lend itself to a course. This is some very thoughtful, thought-provoking, thought-triggering insight that you're providing here, and people might like it as a course or a webinar. So please, number 7 in our introduction here.
Okay, yeah, and I could absolutely see, a 1 hour to each one of these stages, like
Yeah,
just exploring it more deeply. But as I
yeah.
said, these are things I just was brainstorming, last night and this morning, and just like, okay, let me get this written
You've done a
down so I
great
have
job.
something to talk
Yeah,
about.
it's a great job.
Thank you. So stage 7, we're looking at dedication, which is a deeper level of commitment. This is the no shit part. It's like, yes,
Frankly,
all in, dedicated. I call it the glue that holds the relationship together.
uh-huh.
This is that place where we are certain that this is what we want. This is where we want to stay. Again, not stay stagnant, just stay together and move on, which actually gets to the final stage. But and I say commitment, and I mentioned this in the previous stage. This is, as I said, this is the no shit stage. This is like, I am committed, like I am not going to quit when it gets challenging, because
Yes.
I know what's available to me in this relationship. I know it's where I want to be. I've done all this work. I've gotten through this. I've looked at it. So I cannot, well, I can at any point, I can bail, but I'm choosing not to bail on it when things get challenging. And
Uh-huh.
that's where this dedication, commitment part is so important. And then I say, and also continuing to love and to work together for the long term. So it's not like I'll be able to stop working after this. It's just I'm committed to doing the work when it's necessary. And I'm probably going to be making that choice because I look at this 80-20, 80%, 20% thing a lot in terms of, if I can get 80% the way I want it, then I can live with the other 20%. Or if
Yeah.
I've got a list of 10 problems, if I can resolve one that will resolve 80% of the angst I'm experiencing, which one will I choose? That kind of thing. So 80-20. And in this place, is if I'm in a place where 80% of the relationship is everything I could possibly imagine that I want, then yeah, I'm committed, like no shit, to deal with the 20% that's sometimes a real pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Those are times where we storm off to our rooms and say, oh, why did we ever get married? But we're in this dedication. We say, we'll figure it out. We blow it off, we work it off, we come back together, and we say, all right, so what do we need to do to resolve this issue so that we can stay in that 80% of being massively happy that we're here? And that to me, it really is the glue part of a relationship. That's the part that says, if we can manage that, if we can do that with some grace and some maturity or skill or whatever word you want to use there, then this is a forever relationship we've established.
And
And
that's a goosebump moment. I was beautifully put, and it lends itself to your relationship with yourself as well, doesn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah. So relationship with Portugal, relationship with the other in your life, or relationship with yourself. That same dynamic, that same depth of character that I think you're referring to there is so powerful in creating a great life, whether it be in your own experience of yourself, with a partner, with a family, with a company, even with a country. It just stack. I mean, I guess that's a great thing about great truths, isn't it? They stack up at any level and at whichever angle you want to look at them.
Yes. Well, and I view all human experience, unless we are a hermit and totally separated ourselves from other people, is about relationship. But even then, the hermit has a relationship with himself and his environment. So there's no escaping. Humans are beings of relationship. So you can't separate them out. If you're talking
Yes.
about a relationship with someone else, you're talking about a relationship with yourself and your
Yes.
environment. And So to
And
me,
Matty's picking up on that here as well. Overwhelming tasks. It's true, isn't it? This could be difficult. This might be a very difficult part of the journey or a part of my life here, but it's worth it. And it's having the bigger line drawn next to the thing that seems to be irritating or overwhelming you. The bigger line, as I've heard it expressed as, is so important to have, isn't it? Or your possibility, or whatever you might call it, your guiding lights, to come back to that. And as you say, the no shit proposition, this is what I'm here for. So therefore that bit I can put into perspective and blast through it because it's so worth it. And I'm inspired to do so.
Yes. And to be consistent, I think it was Darren who said, it's okay. You can change your mind at any point. You can get all the way to stage 8 and change your mind. It's not like we can't do that. But if I change my mind at the end of this process, then I'll be far more certain that it's the right choice to make, because I've done the work all the way through, and I'm still not getting that 80-20. I'm not even, if I'm at 50-50, it's like, where did I miss? How did that happen? I'm not willing to live a life of 50-50. I'll settle for 80-20 if I can. I'd love 100%, but I don't know how realistic that is. But if I can get 80-20 out of it, that's fantastic. But if I'm at 50-50, I don't know that I can do this anymore. I've done everything I can. So that happens. But usually that's with great reluctance. At that point, it's with huge reluctance that it needs to be something other than it is.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, which leads us nicely to stage 8 then.
Yes, which is evolution. When I thought of that, it just made me smile. It's okay. I'm in this long term. We're committed to each other. We're going to be together. We're going to stay together. Now, how do we evolve together? How do we be one together and continue to grow and continue to contribute to this relationship and continue to maintain this 80-20 or 90-10 or maybe even 100% relationship that we've established? So at that point, there is that, we talked about this, the settling in, not like settling for. I'm not settling for something. I'm settling in. It's a place to me when I think about evolution, my whole being just relaxes. It's like, we're here. There's no risk. There's always risk, I guess. There's no sense of danger. There's a sense of safety, a sense of freedom to explore and to expand and to include, which I've defined before as love. This is the loving space that we've created because hopefully the approach to these stages have been mindful. I don't know that we can actually get to stage 8 if we haven't been mindful along the way. But if we have been, then we're in this place of love and commitment. We've arrived here through the process of working together for mutual benefit. We're open to change and possibility. We're bending and flexing as the circumstances require. We're growing together and deepening this bond that we've created. And to me, that is, we have arrived.
And at that point, it's rinse and repeat, really, isn't it? Because we know to be in the company of a person at evolution stage, we know what that feels like. And to be in the company of a couple who have got to the evolution stage, it's nice to look at people who've got to that, isn't it? Who've worked in their relationship and have got to that and are clearly evolving together. And you can see it, can't you? You can see it in some expats, their very mature relationship with the country they've moved to. You can see it in business people, the very mature relationship they've got with their business, past those infatuated early entrepreneurial outbursts and spikes of activity. I do recognize the evolutionary point and the evolutionary state of mind, isn't it? It's a state of mind. It is a mindfulness, perhaps personified. I don't know, but that is fantastic. Really great work.
Yes, and I do want to just add very, very briefly that this 8th stage is generally nearly ego-free and very ego or attachment, non-attachment stage. So we're able to go and just sit back and experience it without having to be right or wrong or all these other things that we may go through as we get here. So to me, full circle is really the issues of ego and attachment and suffering. Another little trick is have erasable markers in your bathroom so people can actually write things to you about you, that when you go into your bathroom and look in the mirror, say, "You are an amazing friend," or "I love,
Oh,
thank
wow.
you for taking care of me," or what is that. And then you can erase them and people can put new ones up, put them up for yourself. Yeah, it's a great way to affirm.
Really good. Fantastic show today. Thank you very much. Dad jokes, though. We can't go without those, can we? And a Yogi Berra quote of the day. Would you like to voice this, my friend? And you'll cue this today.
Yeah. And this is what stage would that be in? I think maybe 3 or 4. We made too many wrong mistakes.
But you kind of review and let yourself off, don't you? It's just
Yes.
noticing is the important thing. And you had a quote that inspired you. A cue this today as well.
Yes. The love of a person implies not the possession of that person, but the affirmation of that person. It means granting him gladly the full right to his unique humanhood.
Very nice. And the next part of that.
One does not truly love a person and yet seek to enslave him by law or by bonds of dependency or possessiveness.
Harry Overstreet from The Mature Mind. And of course, we can extend this again, can't we, to our relationship with Portugal?
When I am mindful and someone keeps saying, my wife, my husband, my brother, my child, I say, what's their name? Because I want to, Maria, Louisa, John, Billy, whatever. It's like, oh, I want to know the person and the identity of the person, not their relationship to you, which oftentimes when we say it implies ownership. So yeah, I prefer relationship to ownership.
Yes. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Well, apart from narcissists and fascists, but apart from them, we prefer
maybe property.
Okay. Thank you, James. We appreciate your knowledge of philosophy and philanthropic ideals there. So he'll be back. He is our mindful migration man on a Monday. So some thanks for you there right now. But we got to go. James, great job. See you soon, mate. And thank you, everybody.